There's a moment in every battle when a single person decides he's done waiting to die. A moment when fear sharpens into something almost calm, something that drives a man forward while everyone else is praying to just stay alive. On Okinawa, that moment belonged to a quiet Marine who looked at an enemy bunker killing his brothers and decided he'd stop it himself. Not with orders, not with backup, with a flamethrower he built right there on the beach, under fire. This is the wild, almost forgotten story of the man who did what no one else could. When the Marines hit the sand that morning, they expected resistance, but nothing like the nightmare that greeted them. Gunfire exploded from hidden ridges, carving the beach into deadly channels where even lifting your head meant risking a bullet. Men dove behind chunks of coral, barely big enough to hide a boot. Above everything, the enemy machine gun nest kept firing with brutal precision, as if it had been waiting for this moment for days. Every Marine on that beach understood one thing: if that nest wasn't taken out, none of them were making it off the sand. Red Lawson lay flat like everyone else, but his mind wasn't frozen by fear. He was a farm kid from Iowa, quiet, practical, the kind of man who fixed tractors with wire and stubbornness. As he watched the tracer rounds stitching across the beach, he counted the rhythm of the gun and studied where the barrel swung. What looked like certain death to everyone else looked to Red like a problem waiting for someone crazy enough to solve it. And he was already thinking about how someone shouted for a flamethrower team, but the operators were already down, and the remaining tanks had been emptied earlier in the fight. The realization washed over the platoon like cold water. There was no way to hit that bunker, but Red quietly crawled away from the line and reached a smashed supply cart. Inside was a mess of metal, tubing, a damaged fuel tank, junk to anyone else, but raw material to him. A sergeant stared at him like he'd lost it and asked what he was doing. Red answered without looking up, trying to give us a chance. Under fire, with sand kicking up around him, Red began putting together something that barely qualified as a weapon. He patched holes in the tank with rags soaked in fuel, bent tubes into shape, and twisted wires into makeshift clamps. The entire contraption looked like one wrong move would make it explode in his hands. But Red worked with the same calm, focused hands he'd used fixing machinery back on the farm. When he squeezed the igniter and a shaky flame flickered alive, Marines around him stared in disbelief. Someone muttered, "Red, that thing's gonna kill you." He just shrugged and tightened the straps. When Red stood up, the entire platoon froze. No one expected him to actually use that homemade flamethrower, let alone charge straight at the bunker. But that's exactly what he did. He sprinted across open sand, the enemy gun instantly zeroing in on him. Rounds tore through the ground at his heels. Marines yelled for him to get down, but he kept moving, running, sliding, rolling, sprinting again. Somehow, impossibly, he made it all the way to the bunker wall, disappearing into its blind spot, where the machine gun couldn't reach him. Pressed against the cold stone, Red took a single breath to steady himself and then leaned into the opening. He squeezed the trigger, and the flamethrower erupted with a roar that drowned out every other sound on the beach. Fire poured into the bunker, washing over the gun, the gunners, the whole interior. The machine gun choked once and fell silent. Red kept sweeping the flame until nothing moved inside. For the first time all day, the beach fell quiet, a stunned, almost unreal quiet. As soon as the firing stopped, the platoon surged forward like someone had released a held breath. Marines climbed the ridge, medics rushed to pull the wounded back, and the line finally pushed forward. Every man who ran past Red gave him a look, half disbelief, half awe. Red didn't smile or brag, he didn't even say much. He just checked the tank on his back like it was a tool he borrowed and needed to return in one piece. Then he followed the others up the hill, as if he hadn't just done the impossible. When commanders heard what happened, they barely believed it. A Marine built a flamethrower from scraps, charged alone, and wiped out a fortified machine gun nest. It sounded like a rumor until dozens of Marines confirmed it. Red was recommended for the Medal of Honor almost immediately. But when he finally received it, he looked uncomfortable, like the attention didn't sit right with him. He told reporters the same thing he told everyone. "I just didn't want my guys dying." After the war, Red went home and slipped right back into normal life. He took a welding job, bought a small truck, raised 2 kids, and rarely mentioned Okinawa. His Medal of Honor stayed in a drawer under some old shirts. His neighbors only knew him as the quiet man who worked hard and didn't complain. But the Marines who survived because of him never forgot. They knew they were alive because Red Lawson was the kind of man who acted when no one else could. Red Lawson's story isn't just a war story, it's a reminder of the kind of courage that doesn't ask for applause or attention. It's the kind that rises in a terrible moment and says, if someone has to do it, I will. Heroes like Red didn't look for recognition. They just did what had to be done. And if you want more real hidden stories like this, stories of forgotten bravery, impossible decisions, and the people who changed history, make sure you hit subscribe, because the next one is even harder to believe.